One day, Jumping Bear presented himself and reminded Veni of her indebtedness to him in preserving her life, for he was the one who rescued Veni from the revengeful arrow of the Indian chief. Trembling with fear, she listened to his avowal of more than an ordinary feeling, during which he assured her that she had no cause to fear him, that he had always liked the white women and would be more than a friend to her. Veni replied that she did not fear him and felt grateful to him for his kindness and protection, but that unless he proved his friendship for her, no persuasion could induce her to listen. "Will you carry a letter to my people at the fort, delivering it into the hands of the great chief there? They will reward you for your kindness to their sister, they will give you many presents, and you will return rich," she said. "I dare not to go," he replied, "nor can I get back before the warriors come to our village." "My people will give you a fast horse," Veni said, "and you may return speedily. Go now and prove your friendship by taking the letter and returning with your prizes." Veni assured him that the letter contained nothing that would harm him or his people, that she had written of his kindness and of his goodwill towards them. After many long interviews, she at last prevailed upon him to go, and invoking the bright moon as a witness to her pledge of honor and truth. Jumping Bear now started on his journey, bearing the letter which Veni believed was to seal her fate. In the moonlight she watched his retreating form, imploring heaven to grant the safe delivery of the little messenger, upon which so much depended. It was a daring and venturesome deed. Should he prove false to her and allow anyone outside the fort to see the letter, her doom would be inevitable. Many days of intense anxiety were passed after his departure. The Indian women were fearing that Veni had done wrong by sending him, and were continually asking questions. It was with difficulty that she could stop their anxiety and prevent them from disclosing the secret to the other women. The contents of the letter were a warning to the big chief and the soldiers of an intended attack on the fort and the massacre of the garrison, using her as a ruse to enable them to get inside the fort and besieging them to rescue Veni if possible. The messenger now reached the fort and was received by the officer of the day, Lieutenant Hazelberger, and conducted to the commander of the post, Major House, and Adjutant Pell, who had been left there to treat with the Indians on Veni's account. General Sully was absent at Washington, but every necessary precaution was taken to secure the fort. Jumping Bear received a suit of clothing and some presents, and was sent back with a letter for Veni, which she never received as she never saw Jumping Bear again. The night before the departure from the Blackfeet village towards the North American fort, Veni was lying awake, and heard the chief address his men seriously, upon the subject of their wrongs at the hands of the whites. She now understood and spoke the Indian tongue mostly, and so comprehended his speech, which as near as she can recollect was as follows.
"Friends and sons, listen to my words. You are a great and powerful band of our people, the inferior race who have encroached on our rights and territories, justly deserve hatred and destruction. These intruders came among us, and we took them by the hand. We believed them to be friends and true speakers. They have shown us how false and cruel they can be. They build forts to live in and shoot from their big guns. Our people fall before them. Our game is chased from the hills. Our women are taken from us, or want to forsake our lodges, and wronged and deceived. It has only been 4 or 5 moons since they drove us to desperation, killed our brothers, and burned our tippies. There is no truth, nor friendship, in the white men. Meet them with equal cunning, Show them no mercy. They are but few. We are many. Whet your knives and string your bows. Sharpen the tomahawk and load the rifle. Let the wretches die who have stolen our lands, and we will be free to roam over the soil that was our fathers'. We will come home bravely from the battle. Our song shall rise among the hills, and every tipi shall be hung with the scalp locks of our enemy.
This declaration of hostilities was received with grunts and approval, and silently the war preparations went on, that she might not know the evil design hidden beneath the mask of friendship. The day before leaving the Blackfeet village, Veni gave all her Indian trinkets to a little girl who had been her constant companion. She was half white and was granddaughter of a chief called Wichinkuyapa, who also treated Veni with kindness. The morning after the chief's address to his warriors, the Indians were all ready for the road, and mounting in haste set up their farewell chant as they wound in a long column out of the village. It was winter and the ground was covered with snow, but so cold was the air that its surface bore the horses' feet on its hard glittering breast, only breaking through occasionally in the deep gullies. Still 200 miles from the Blackfeet village to Fort Sully, in the middle of winter, and the weather was intensely cold, from the effects of which Veni's ill-clad body suffered severely. She was forced to walk a great part of the way to keep from freezing, hoping for deliverance, yet dreading lest the treacherous plans of the Indians for the capture of the fort and massacre of its garrison might prove successful, and Veni's return to captivity inevitable. Striving to bear with patience the mental and body ills from which she suffered, her great fear was that her letter had not fallen into the right hands. On their journey they came in sight of a few lodges, and in among the timber they camped for the night, while in one of the lodges, to Veni's surprise, a gentlemanly figure approached her, dressed in modern style. It astonished her to meet this well-mannered gentleman under such peculiar circumstances. He drew near and addressed Veni courteously. "This is cold weather for traveling. Do you not find it so?" the gentleman inquired. "Not when I find myself going in the right direction," she replied. "Do you live in that vicinity?" Veni asked. He smiled and said, "I'm a dweller in the hills and confess that civilized life has no charms for me. I find in freedom and nature all the elements for happiness. Having been separated from the knowledge and interest of national affairs, just when the struggle agitating our country was at its height." Veni asked the question, "Has Richmond been taken?" "No, nor never will it be," was the reply. Further conversation on national affairs convinced Veni that he was a rank rebel. They held a long conversation on various topics. The gentleman informed Veni and said that he had lived with the Indians for 14 years, that he was born in St. Louis, had an Indian wife and several children, of whom he was very proud, and he seemed to be perfectly satisfied with his mode of living. Veni was very cautious in her words with him, lest he might prove to be a traitor, but in their conversation some Indian words escaped her lips. What she had said was carried from lodge to lodge, increasing rather than diminishing, until it returned to the lodge where she was. The Indians, losing confidence in her, sent a young man at midnight to the camp of the white men, to ask what had been said by Veni and her feelings towards them. He assured the messenger that she was perfectly friendly, that she had breathed nothing but kindliness for them and was truly contented, and there was no cause to imagine evil. This man trafficked and traded with the Indians, disposing of his goods in St. Louis and in eastern cities, and was then on his way to his home, near the mouth of the Yellowstone River. Early in the forenoon of the last day's travel, her eager and anxious eyes beheld them nearing the fort. The Indian paused and dismounted to arrange their dress and see the condition of their arms. Their blankets and furs were adjusted, bows were strung, and the guns examined by them carefully. They then divided into squads of 50s and several of these squads remaining in ambush among the hills, for the purpose of intercepting anyone who might escape the anticipated massacre at the fort. The others then rode on towards the fort, bearing Veni with them. A painfully startling sight met her gaze. One of the warriors in passing thrust out his hand to salute her. It was covered by one of her husband's gloves, and the sight of such a memento filled Veni with inexpressible dread to his face. Nothing in the least way connected with him has transpired to throw any light upon his whereabouts, or whether living or dead, since they had been so suddenly separated. All was darkness and doubt concerning her husband. Now as they approached the place where her husband's fate would be revealed, and if he lived, they would meet each other once more. The appearance of that glove on the Indian's hand was like a touch that awakened many chords, some to thrill with hope and some to jar painfully with fear. In appearance, she had suffered from her long estrangement from home life. Veni had been obliged to paint daily like the rest of her companions, and narrowly escaped tattooing, by pretending to faint away every time the implements for the marring operation were applied. During the journey, whenever an opportunity offered, she would use a handful of snow to cleanse her cheeks from the Indian adornment. And now, as they drew nearer to the fort, and she could see the chiefs arranging themselves for effect, and anticipation became so intense as to be painful. 8 chiefs rode in advance, one leading Veni's horse by the bridle, and the warriors rode in the rear. The cavalcade was imposing. As they neared the fort, they raised the war song, loud and wild on the still wintry air, and as if in answer to its notes. The glorious flag of her country was run up and floated bravely forth on the breeze from the tall flagstaff within the fort. Veni's eyes caught the glad sight and her heart gave a wild bound of joy. Something seemed to rise in her throat and choke her breathing. Everything was changed. The torture of suspense, the agony of fear, and dread of evil to come, all seemed to melt away like mist before the morning sunshine when she beheld the precious emblem of liberty. How insignificant and contemptible in comparison were the flaunting Indian flags that had so long been displaced to her, and how her heart thrilled with a sense of safety and protection as she saw the roofs of the buildings within the fort, covered by the brave men who composed that little garrison. The precious emblem of liberty whose beloved stripes and stars floated proudly out seemed to beckon Veni to freedom and security, and as the fresh breeze stirred its folds shining in the morning light and caused them to wave lightly to and fro, they came like the smile of love and the voice of affection, all combined to welcome her to home and happiness once more. An Indian hanger-on of the fort has sauntered carelessly forward a few minutes previous, as if actuated by curiosity, but in reality to convey intelligence to his fellow Indians of the state of the fort and its defenses. Then the gate was opened, and Major House appeared, accompanied by several officers and an interpreter, and received the chiefs who rode in advance. Meanwhile, Captain Logan, the officer of the day, a man whose kind and sympathetic nature did honor to his years and rank, approached Veni. Her emotions were inexpressible now that she felt herself so nearly rescued. At last they overcame her. She had borne grief and terror and privation, but the delight of being once more among her people was so overpowering that she almost lost the power of speech or motion, and when Veni faintly murmured, "Am I free? Indeed free?" Captain Logan's tears answered her and he uttered, "Yes," for he realized what freedom meant to one who had tasted the bitterness of bondage and despair. As soon as the chiefs who accompanied Veni entered the gate of the fort, the commandant's voice thundered the order for them to be closed. The Blackfeet were shut out, and Veni was beyond their power to recapture. After a bondage lasting more than 5 months, during which she had endured every torture, she once more stood free among people of her own race, all ready to assist Veni and restore her to her husband's arms. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell to be notified about our latest videos.